Welcome back, Illia. Have a seat. Okay. You should have. Great. Thank you so much for joining. And just to remind you again, my name is Mike Butcher, editor-at-large at TechCrunch, the small little blog you may have heard of that writes about startups and venture capital. That was a fantastic speech. What I'm interested in doing is I'm going to wind you back a little bit, because right at the beginning, as we say in journalism, you buried the lead, effectively. The lead or the lead? I can't remember. I can never remember. But you definitely buried it, because right in there, you said that you were one of the original authors of the 2017 AI paper, Attention is All You Need. Surely love is all you need. But let's move along. You were obviously one of the co-creators of this transformer model. How does it feel to be not Sam Altman right now?
Well, I don't know how it does feel to be Sam Altman, so it's hard to answer to that directly. But I think from my perspective, it's on one side extremely exciting to see the evolution that we've seen, right, in past 5 years that this technology has brought, right? And obviously there was a lot of work that went into making something that was a research project that was cool, that, first started answering questions and translation, then kind of become more and more of a tool, and then actually turned into ChatGPT and Midjourney and all the technology. And there's a ton of work that huge community with.
You're far too humble, but it really is quite fantastic that that actually happened. Let's sort of dig in a little bit. There's a reason why you wrote that paper, and really very much about AI, of course. But I know that there's a story about what happened next, because you wanted people to work with you on some of these ideas, and you couldn't pay them. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so we pretty much kind of started near AI. We did not have that much data or compute, and so we've tried to be smarter. We tried to generate better training data for models, and to do that, we engaged people around the world to actually do small tasks for us. And Alex Kidanov mentioned some of that before. And to do that, you need to pay people, right? It's students who usually would do this work. They are in China, they are in Eastern Europe, they are in kind of developing countries. PayPal doesn't work. Some of them don't have bank accounts. In Ukraine, some other system, and you cannot actually have even a good automated system to do that. Even now, this is still a problem. And we kind of wanted some global payments network that actually just works, and we can program to do these payments for small amounts to students around the world. And blockchain seemed like an answer, right? 2018, we started looking at it, and it was not. The fees that you would pay on Bitcoin or Ethereum were way higher than we were paying for some of the work that people were doing. And so we kind of started to try to investigate what should it look like, and kind of arrived to near design to really build something that's easy to use, highly scalable, kind of accessible to everyone, and really easy to program.
Well, it really is quite a visionary point that so many people remember that era, people talking about proof of work, proof of stake, but you came straight out with the proof of stake model, and of course the rest is history. We all know about that. But let's dig in now a little bit more about the kinds of things you want to get into now. Now, we saw OpenAI's announcements only a few days ago. It's clear that what's happening, and you referred to it in your speech about this agent model, these mini GPTs that they're going to build. Why is it that you think it's so? I mean, you did talk a little bit about it, but let's unpack it a bit more. Why you think Web3 and AI, the future of AI, are so inextricably entwined, the futures of those two issues?
Yeah, I think, so there's two sides of this, right? One side is this idea that you definitely don't want one company or even a handful of companies to be controlling kind of the intelligence of the whole world, right? And that's what is happening. These models are bringing kind of intelligence tools in our disposal to build these different business or operators or assistants or interns or kind of these instruments. And so you don't want them to be deciding, like, for example, Nate trying to do a demo and it going down for a few hours, right? You don't want them to be able to switch the model behind the scene for you without you even knowing. And especially you don't want, if you're in a business or especially healthcare or any other use case where it really matters, you don't want it to be kind of possible for somebody to influence and change things as you're actually interacting with it. Imagine you have a financial system and you kind of using it, and somebody behind on the other side is able to like, well, if Goldman Sachs using it, then let's just tell them to buy all this stock, right? OpenAI stock. Like you don't want that to be happening. You want a way to ensure that the results are correct. You want to ensure that the result is the same and kind of have an audit trail, have a way to kind of provision and request kind of new models for your specific use cases. So you want that part. And then on the other part, as I mentioned, the AI agents themselves, they cannot interact, like they can only interact with APIs, right? And at the same time, they cannot do KYC. They cannot like onboard into a bank. They cannot actually transact as a business, for example, because they cannot have a legal signature, right? You need cryptography. You need a way to interact with kind of the world and finances. And to do that, blockchain is the way. It's interface.
I'm here to ask the dumb questions, being a dumb journalist, but why would you, what's the incentive for a foundational model like OpenAI to introduce this extraneous layer over the top? How are they going to be beaten into it? Is there going to be a carrot or a stick?
So, I mean, there's a carrot on the side of using blockchain, right? Again, there's already plugins directly in ChatGPT you can use to interact with blockchain, right? There's people who have built some systems around that as well. And that's more of a carrot because it allows to have more functionality that is indeed financial. I think the open source part is going to be more of a stick. And like there will be kind of a battle between regulatory capture, the kind of centralization powers, and open source decentralization, kind of open economy, right? The standard battle that we have, for thousands of years, right? Is the centralized, model better, where you have full control and full ownership, and you're able to dictate to everyone else what should be done? Or you want a more open model where everybody can contribute, where everybody can participate and, actually economically be incentivized
Isn't
to participate?
the problem that Sam Altman, a very clever man, has decided, he's seen what's happened to other platforms, how in Web 2 you had this sort of unbundling. You had, a company would launch, famously there's the famous graphic of Craigslist, and out of Craigslist came Airbnb and car sales and other kinds of services, and unpacked and unbundled those sort of early Web 1 models into Web 2. The unbundling is already happening with OpenAI. They're already unbundling themselves as per their announcements of only a few days ago. We're literally seeing it happen before our eyes. So they're leaping forward into the future to create this app store ahead of all of us trying to innovate and create new kinds of startups and apps and other kinds of services. How are we going to fight that?
I don't think we need to actually fight that. I think the interesting thing that happens here with transitioning from needing to write a lot of code, building services and systems, to this new natural language interface. And so through that, like those GPTs, right, that they announced are just a set of natural language instructions and kind of prompt engineering and maybe a few like integrations, API integrations. And you can actually replicate that very easily and cheaply on top of a open source model, right? You don't need to lock it in. I think the bigger challenge is there's actually no business model for building those, period. It's more of a problem of startup land that we actually need to have, and same as OpenAI, they incentivizing them just based on their revenue in the future. And actually, the blockchains have pioneered that model. Actually, OpenAI, interestingly, very similar structure to a blockchain foundation. They have a foundation that is nonprofit, that indeed wants to redistribute the revenue to the participants and contributors. So like they're not fully that different. They're just doing it in a very centralized manner.
Right. Yeah.
But like structurally, I think we will see either them actually going in that direction themselves, or projects like Ritual and others who are trying to kind of build this more open source, open, participant system where everybody can actually benefit from contributing, and then that becoming a bigger kind of economic driver for people to start and participate, and kind of compete with OpenAI models.
I know that you are quite excited about the potential for zero-knowledge proofs and their application, in AI and on these new models. Tell us a little bit more about your thinking about that and the kind of wider implications zooming out.
Yeah, so zero-knowledge proofs is a really innovative technology that allows to pretty much go from what we usually have, which is servers and kind of backends that run, and its guarantee of correctness is just based on that this company is running it.
Yeah.
To have a mathematical proof that it's exactly executed the way it said it would. And this transition allows a lot of new things. I mean, there's a lot of innovation in blockchain space and scalability, but in machine learning, but also in data processing, in kind of data acquisition, this allows to have pretty much potentially a ton of compute, potentially running the model, and have a very small proof that's really cheaply to verify that this output is correct. Now, zero knowledge, although it's not a completely new technology, it's very fast evolving, and in like past 4 years, it went up in speed 1,000 times, right? But it's still not there to be able to prove like large models. But we can see that progress continue chipping away. But at the same time, you can already do something on data side, right? You can have data provenance, you can have kind of understanding where things are coming from and how they were used, and have some additional proofs for payments, for example, if some data were used or not used for training the model.
You were originally at Google and obviously went on to create NEAR. You must have quite high-level contacts. What's some of the things that the platforms say to you? I'm sure you're amongst friends. You can reveal to us what those private conversations. But more generally speaking, what sort of vibe and what sort of signals do you see coming out of the bigger platforms, and how they might, because they probably agree with you about some of the things you've just said on stage. They know that probably it will happen in the way that you've characterized it, and yet we don't see those signals coming out. But do you think they're open to that conversation?
I think there's probably two sides. There's one side which is hey, this is an important technology, but it's like the consideration is that it's too dangerous for people to have it, right? And this is where like a philosophical discussion is like, is it too dangerous to have technology available to everyone or not? And we can have like a separate discussion on like the philosophy of that, and how, at least I believe, whatever, like information wants to be free. That's my kind of main philosophy. And so through that, like whatever people build will become open, right? And so like there's no point of trying to hold it back, right? It's like trying, yes, we have built this, but like one way or another, either somebody else or it will leak, or somebody else will build it, and kind of knowing that it's possible.
But continue.
Yeah, so that's, I think, the biggest kind of decision making, because I agree, like for OpenAI, I think they actually are very much aligned with. That's why they build this. The company structure and everything is very like kind of blockchain-esque from an incentives perspective. It's because of this. But they have this fundamental like, oh, this is too dangerous for others. We are the ones who know best how to do it, right? And this is like, I don't agree with that premise, but this is kind of their main thing. I think for many other companies right now, it's more of a survival game, because they see that this technology coming in actually will disrupt their business model completely, right? For Google, in many ways, if you just go into a chat and asking questions, you don't need to go and visit Google search. You don't need to go to pages, right?
Yeah.
And if people don't visit pages and go to and see the ads, right, they're disrupted. So I think that's the other transition for them. It's like they fight for survival in a way. And obviously Google has been the AI powerhouse, so they also a little bit kind of the bright thing there too. So I think that's where, if you look at the forces, and then you have, Meta, which is open source, and they go in full on open source, and they really trying to be the driver there and kind of provide and work with a lot of actually external companies to be the driver of open source innovation.
Well, of course, it's in Meta's interest for open source to be LLMs to be out there, because it's not their search is not their business model, whereas of course it is Google's. Now that you're CEO, as per the announcement only the other day, are you going to be positioning NEAR in that direction to work with these the big tech sector?
I mean, the idea, as I mentioned, like AI is a kind of big theme for NEAR, and Alex Kidanov mentioned like us investing actually even before this hype started into more data. We have been building kind of capabilities around foundational models. We've been working with projects for decentralized inference. We have hackathon and projects in the ecosystem building tooling around this, and we want to work with kind of projects and companies that are aligned with us on how we see this. And so yeah, I'm sure there will be some interesting announcements in coming weeks.
Do you think that there's that's interesting. Okay, right, I'll take note of that. Do you think that there's something in a sort of a structural problem in the way the Web3 industry, if you want to call it that, for want of a better phrase, has, in that because of this, sort of competing layers, the layer one models, there's the sort of decentralized approach, there's the sort of the open source movement that is very often underlying it, that it hasn't had that centralized lobby voice that the big tech platforms have, say, in Washington or in Brussels. How do you think you're going to be able to insert yourselves into those conversations about the future of AI in the future?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is true that I think hasn't been there's actually a bunch of lobby from Web3 in various places, but they also kind of decentralized in a way, right? There's actually a bunch of them, and they have different aspects and shapes, although share a lot of the same values and structure. I think on the AI side, kind of this AI blockchain intersection is just forming. It's just coming together. I think the missing piece that I like to point out is that the regulators need to start using blockchains themselves, and that's probably the missing piece around kind of the lobbying of blockchain. It should not be like explaining blockchain per se, but actually explain how to use it for their own use case. And then as they start to use it, to record the, what are the addresses, for example, what are the bank accounts or people who are, violating the sanction list, the ones that record, registered securities and all the metadata around them. Like, this becomes a source of information that everybody else can use transparently and easily. And this is literally the point of regulation, is to have this source of information that everybody can rely on. And so it allows to have the protection for the users now implemented across the stack everywhere else. I think that's a missing piece, not just a voice, but actually starting to use it. It's like, everybody in trying to regulate computing without owning a computer. That's current state.
Do you think the Trojan horse that will be able to be inserted into that conversation will be the protection of citizens?
I think yes, because,
In other words, the governance, the protection, the ability to allow citizens to own their own data, that will finally win the argument for governments and regulators.
Especially from the aspect of kind of reputation and content, because what happens is right now, it's not the misinformation is actually not the problem of AI. This is a problem that existed in the world for thousands of years since people started talking, right? We have blockchain itself is built on Byzantine fault tolerance, because we assume there is some percentage of people who are maliciously trying to attack the system, right? The challenge with AI is that it gives a tool that can scale up the misinformation, can scale up the manipulation, scale up the and make it individual how you, for example, generate a way to, for example, convince a person to vote for someone, right? So like in politics, what we'll see next year is that individual ads generated specifically for individual person for a political candidate that know exactly what are your political interests are and fine-tune what candidate is saying for that person, right? That's possible right now. It's not that hard. And so if you want to actually have a way to protect from that, you need to use cryptography. You need to use a way to record and like have a ledger of this information.
Well, it's all, but obviously the merging of these services are already starting to happen. I mean, the UK just only a week or so ago announced that OpenAI would be powering the new chat bot for the National Health Service in the UK. So these things are already starting to be rolled out.
Well, I mean, this is the other side. I'm saying like somebody maliciously trying to attack and say like, I am your doctor, and or I am the candidate you should vote for, and by the way, I really agree with you on everything you say, right? And you should vote for me, right? And like literally deploy that to like everybody in Iowa. And
I want to throw a couple of things at you in the last dying minutes of the conversation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Sam Altman and Johnny Ives, ex-Apple, obviously famously creator of the iPhone, obviously with Steve Jobs, but the designer of the iPhone, are rumored to be working on a hardware device powered by AI, presumably OpenAI. What are your views on that?
I think we'll see the open source models running on edge on mobile phones, and this will be the way to actually like have the private data used, and at the same time will promote the open source a lot more and get it kind of to be a main driver for this, not OpenAI models.
You said, I think in your tweet stream the last couple of days, you said the future of open web is multi-chain, not maximalism. All of us in Web3 need to work together to help founders and developers deliver the best possible experiences to users to achieve mainstream adoption. Are you buoyant? Are you optimistic about mainstream adoption?
For sure, yeah. I mean, we have biggest apps in Web3, consumer apps in Web3 that are built on Near. We see kind of the next wave of applications that are really hiding the blockchain coming and kind of enabling new experiences. And I think that in itself is, already a proof, but I think we'll see kind of a wave after that, which will be kind of the experiences that kind of were not possible in centralized, right? Something where it's more about the kind of how the community coming together versus kind of individual kind of quote-unquote conversation that right now is when you're using an app, right? And I think that is where we'll see a lot like kind of the social interactions coming in that will be really exciting and will drive more and more kind of effects, but it will not come if you need to install wallet and if you need to like know your 0x address, right? It will come when you can use this really straightforwardly.
I was looking back at the history of how we covered Near in the old days on TechCrunch, and some of the articles in the early days was that you were billed as an Ethereum killer, like many other projects out there. Are you happy with how things turned out?
I mean, we never were trying to kill Ethereum. I think like I've said that even in the beginning, like Ethereum, and with any decentralized network, you cannot kill them. They will continue running. They will, if people want to build on them, if there's value in using them, it will continue. And we always thought of us as adding more functionality, making things easier, really onboarding developers and users who don't want to know the exact details of how your blockchain works, but actually want to abstract the blockchain and leverage it as a primitive for their applications. And so for that, we're on a good track. Obviously, there's a lot more to do and a lot more projects to bring. But at the same time, as I said, like we actually started by talking with the Ethereum Foundation. We started by talking with folks across the whole ecosystem. We have worked with a lot of folks in various ways, as well as now we're actually introducing some of the features to really open up and kind of collaborate in an active way.
Well, as somebody who's observed you from afar for the last couple of years and seen how Near's grown, I think it's been absolutely fantastic to watch the ecosystem develop, and it seems to be quite an exciting time. But I'm afraid we're out of time. But for now, Illia Polosukhin, thank you so much. And from me, Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
and
Mike.
See you again. Thank you.